Hello everyone, I'm Jerry Puckett and welcome to Shutter Chats. This week we are talking about street photography right here on our show. This week I want to talk about street photography. I think it's a very interesting um, area of photography. A lot of people are showcasing, they're capturing the history of cities and towns across the country, around the world, every single day. And there are a lot of great legendary street photographers out there, including Cartier-Bresson, and Meyer, and a lot of those types of photographers. They're capturing the moments, they're capturing the people, they're capturing the life of the city and the towns and the communities. And I think that that's something that a lot of people will cherish as we move forward. We look back at the works of those great artists, Henry Cartier-Bresson and Vivian Meyer. So right there, you have just even a couple street photographers that are very good at what they did. They were very good, and there are people today that are still doing this, like I said. But there is an issue that sometimes arises, and that issue is people being concerned about their photographs being taken. Sometimes, even when we're taking photographs of maybe a building, a structure, or something, there are people who seem to think or assume that you're taking photographs of that person. I can't think of any time in history where there have been so many cameras, so many surveillance cameras in cities and towns across this country and around the world. People don't think about it. People don't think about being photographed on their walks through town by people who are using cell phones to capture the images. And there are those that actually use the cameras, which are very, out and openly used, that make it clear that photographs aren't being taken. But somebody walking by with a cell phone and pretending to be texting or surfing something on a browser or using an app, people don't realize that photographs might be taken. So we have to realize that we live in a very technological society. There's a lot of cameras, and people don't always like to have their photographs taken, at least knowing that they're being taken or potentially taken. And a lot of times, even when I'm taking photographs of buildings, or if I'm taking a picture of a sign or something that really has, something that's of photographic quality, I've had people, have, stopped and told me, be careful who you're taking a picture of. Why are you taking a picture of my vehicle and that type of thing. And I've never taken photographs of something that I didn't want to take a photograph of. And I definitely aren't just taking pictures of junky vehicles that somebody's driving by in. And I try to make sure I clear the moment, clear the, for the way for taking that photograph and that type of thing. So, what type of tools do we use to capture the images for street photography? And you can use your smartphone, your iPhone, to do that. But we talk sometimes about quality images. Do we want to use maybe a Fuji X100 or a small Leica camera that can cost us thousands of dollars just to take photographs, and do that street photography? One of the alternatives that I use now is a small camera that fits in the pocket, and it's a camera that actually came out in the mid-1960s. It was developed in Germany. It's very, very different in the way that it's manufactured. A very good quality camera, a camera that has a metal top and a metal bottom. It uses, zone focusing, just a matter of just extending out the lens barrel, locking it in place, and setting the feet or meters from my subject to the camera lens. And that again is going to slow me down a little bit, but I'm able to take a really good picture. I can go anywhere from 3.5 to 22 f-stops on that, to stop it up or stop it down. I can also set my shutter to go all the way up to 1/500th of a second, all the way down to the bulb mode if I really wanted to. So this camera actually is the Rollei 35. It came in many different variations. This camera is small. This camera usually goes undiscovered in a city or town that I'm working in doing street photography. There are a lot of different editions of this camera. Some, are made in Germany, or at least stamped "made in Germany" on the back, before the operations or manufacturing operations were moved to the Singapore plant, where the later copies of these cameras were made and manufactured. So, if you get a Singapore one, they're still a great camera. They are just as good, actually, as the ones made in China or in Germany. And you really can't go wrong with these Rollei 35 cameras. Now this is the Rollei 35 that you were looking at here, and what you see here is the front of the camera. I'm just going to show you here that when you have the shutter cocked on this camera, that's the only way that you can turn the barrel in and actually push the barrel in and recess it, back to its recessed position. But when you want to use the camera, you basically just have to pull that out, the barrel, turn the barrel. You'll want to turn over here, and you want to make sure that you set your aperture either from 3.5, 4, 5.6, 8, 11, maybe it'll be 11, let's say, for an instance. Adjust your shutter speed here. It might be 1/25 of a second. You also have a light meter here, which will function. And the light meter on this one does work. Because of the lighting conditions here, though, it's not really doing anything, but it does work. The light meter uses a 1.35 battery, originally a mercury battery. Today you can get those from Weincell, Weincell. They make these replacement batteries, and I think they're about the most accurate way to get a good battery for these older cameras that require that 1.35 volt. If you look at it here, this is really interesting. You only have an optical viewfinder, and you're going to look through the optical viewfinder when you're composing your photographs. So you're going to have to look through that in order to do so. This is your button used to push in and turn and recess the lens barrel. This is all metal construction in here. Top is metal construction. If I want to open up the camera to load film, I can do that, but this is the quirky thing about these cameras, is at the bottom you'll notice that there is a cold shoe here where you can actually take a photograph using a flash. This is the rewind crank to rewind the film into the film cassette, and then of course the auto reset counter that you're going to use to count the number of exposures that you've taken. But to open the camera, you flip this little button here, slide off the back, and this is the interesting part of this camera. This is how the camera looks from the back. This is where your film is going to go. Your cassette is going to go right into this area. And you're going to put it in here. You're going to flip down that pressure plate. And then here's your lens, and all of that is going to be located in this area of the camera. You're going to bring your film across, and you're going to load it in by putting it into the slot. They're marked here. On the take-up spool that's built into the camera. And you're going to flip this door down after you've wound it through a little bit, and you're going to put the cover back on. You're going to put the cover back on the camera, and you're going to flip this little lock in place. You're going to advance using the advance, and you're going to keep advancing till you get to number 1, and you're ready to start to shoot your photographs. After you finish off your roll of film, you're going to take this button and you're going to flip it up into the rewind position. And then you can go down here to the bottom and use the crank and then crank in your film. After you're done, you can push the rewind button back down, and there you have it. You have the Rollei 35. It's got a little hand strap here that's very very useful when you're actually using it to hold on to. So this camera is I think, one of the best essential tools you can use for street photography. Um, the Rollei 35, and again, I'd point out too that you have on the back here this one's made in Singapore, but still is just really as good as any of these Rollei 35 cameras that are even made in Germany. The Rollei 35 was invented around 1967. There's a lot of engineering that went into that. It went through a course of different models over the years, and I believe in sometime in the 1990s is the last run of the Rollei 35s. There are some that say that the later production ones are just not as well built as the earlier production models. So again, this is the only one I have used, is this production model of the Rollei 35, and it has been just a wonderful camera. No problems, no frame spacing issues. Every exposure that I've taken, as long as I've metered it right, they've came out perfectly. And I've done some really good shots, and I'm working on actually putting together, a book that has some of the street photography that I've done over the past. That was really interesting. I think you hopefully found that interesting to see a little bit about how the Rollei 35 camera works. I really put some use to this camera, a lot of rolls of film. I've taken a lot of great black and white film with it. I've also shot color slide film with this camera as well. So you could shoot color, black and white slide film, 35 millimeter film, with this camera very easily and get great results. It might take a little bit of a learning curve for you to do that, especially with the zone focusing, but I think once you pick up on that, you're going to be able to, meter your light and measure out your focusing scale, and then of course, shoot the photographs. And again, you could do all the way up to 36 exposures on a 36 exposure roll with this. Take it home and or back to your office or wherever you do your scanning, scan the images in off the negatives, and you'll be able to then have some great street photography images. And I've done a lot of this. It's not that hard to even load the camera up, even when you're out and about. Sometimes I'll just, put the camera down maybe on the ledge somewhere and, open the camera up, remove the film that's been exposed, and then drop in another 35 millimeter roll, load it up, and I'm ready to go again. So, having the right tools to do street photography is very important. And, I personally think that a DSLR, that, something of the magnitude of a Nikon D3 or a D4, D5, or a large flagship model such as an F, 3, 4, 5, or even a 6 may be a little too much when you're going out doing street photography. I think that we try to stay as covert as possible to capture the moment, that decisive moment when we're doing it. And I might add that you always want to make sure that you use ethics, in doing street photography. Just being careful, making sure that your safety is utmost and important, but at the same time, if it's clear that somebody doesn't want their photograph taken, that you're not taking those photographs, and that you are complying with their wishes. But if it's something that you really want to photograph, and buildings and those types of images, and you feel comfortable with doing the street photography, then I think you should have no problems. Again, thank you for tuning in this week to Shutter Chats. I'm Jerry Puckett, and I will see you again next time for another one later.